He's a complete pathological liar.
Let's be honest. There are outsiders coming into communities, stealing and moving jobs away, and making life harder for people living there. And they have names: Donald Trump and J.D. Vance.
Complete liar. Lied about being in Tiananmen Square. Lied about being a head coach of a football team.
Because this started, and I love this story, as a young prosecutor. Kamala Harris talked about going in that courtroom for the first time.
Pathological liars. People that are habitual liars. They just lie all the time about everything. Yeah. Oh, you didn't deploy for war. You didn't. Why are you saying you deployed at war? The weapons you used in war? No. You weren't in war.
I plan on waking up on November 6th with Madam President.
I want to be clear. You won't be waking up together.
No, you weren't a head coach. You were the water boy. What the f*** are you talking about?
I thought some of that was weird.
He's just a liar.
Walz says Democrats hate success.
We as Democrats, we want people to pay their fair share, but why are we against people being successful like that? We can't be. Why are we against? We should talk about businesses. Not all businesses exploit their workers, and we get ourselves stuck in that.
Oh, well,
and I think we lose them.
Get a room. Oh, wait, they were in a room. Vince.
This is the guy that was rooting against Tesla stock.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the same guy.
No, it's amazing.
Something absolutely insane just happened live on air and no one saw it coming. Joe Rogan blinked like he short-circuited. Greg Gutfeld nearly choked on his drink. And Tim Walz. He might still be buffering. This wasn't a political debate, it was a public execution. One wild comment from Walz set the whole thing off, triggering a meltdown so intense the internet's still trying to recover. So what did he say that had everyone spiraling at once? Buckle up. This wasn't just a broadcast. It was a roast, a riot, and a reckoning all rolled into one.
Oh, Tim Walz is out there talking again.
Did you say he could fight any Trump supporter?
Yeah, he says he kicked, and they're scared of him because he could fix a truck. Like they're threatened by his masculinity. I know how to fix a truck. That's what he said. I'm like, do you? I bet you don't.
The lady doth protest too much.
I bet you don't.
I fear.
I bet if I bring a broken truck to you and a bag of tools.
Meanwhile, Kamala's VP, Tim Walz, is being accused of lying about his rank, which is called stolen valor. But in Walz's defense in Minneapolis, stealing is legal.
What do you get when Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld start talking lockdowns, mandates, and political gaslighting? A full-blown governor sprinting faster than his PR team can draft. A damage control tweet. It started slow. Rogan raised an eyebrow. Gutfeld leaned in and, somewhere deep in Minnesota, Tim Walz's staff began frantically Googling how to vanish from public record. This wasn't a debate. It was a two-man comedy horror roast and Walz was the main course. The man turned leadership into a masterclass of Olympic-level flip-flopping. And the worst part, the cameras were rolling the whole time.
Walz continues to be criticized for embellishing his rank in service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resign. When reached for comment, Walz yelled, "Hey, look over there!" and then ran away.
No, the video of him taking down the Minnesota flag and he replaced it with the new flag that looks a lot like the Somali flag. Minnesota has a huge population of Somalis in it.
Wait a minute.
So he gets the flag, picks it up, moves it out of the way, and replaces it. Look at this.
There, that's better.
Why is that better?
I don't know.
Let's start with the man, the myth, the Midwestern mystery himself, Governor Tim Walz. Once a mild-mannered high school teacher with big dreams and even bigger spreadsheets, he strolled into office armed with charm, optimism, and a love for decisions. But then that spreadsheet spontaneously combusted. One minute he was following the science. The next, he was freestyling pandemic policy like a jazz saxophonist on triple espresso running on vibes. Chaos and zero sleep. Tim Walz didn't just lead. He improvised governance like it was open mic night and the punchlines wrote themselves.
Kennedy, I like it. Like, what a better way to show their opposition to successful people than making him VP. He's the best example of failing up.
Yeah, and he didn't even do good at failing up because he helped tank the ticket and she lost the race because it showed, like, Tim Walz is the best example for why Kamala Harris has the worst political instincts in the Democrat Party, which is, I mean, it's a low bar, but...
For the chaos, Tim Walz looked like your friendly, overly polite neighbor, the kind who waves at everyone while aggressively overwatering his lawn. But when COVID hit, it was like he took every public health guideline, tossed them in a blender, and hit puree. Gyms locked, churches closed, corner cafes boarded up, but mass protests totally fine. Apparently, the virus takes a smoke break when the message is politically approved. Logic left the building and so did the trust.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Well, welcome to the Capitol. It's great that you're all, sir. You're welcome to come. Let me finish. Let me finish and vote.
Hey, sir, he doesn't have fucking votes, sir. Shut your fucking mouth.
This was a man who wielded emergency powers, like Thanos with a PowerPoint. Every time someone asked, "When does this end?" he'd snap out another executive order, like he was collecting Infinity Stones for his lockdown gauntlet. And don't even get started on the mask mandates. It wasn't policy, it was a full-blown trilogy. Masks on. Masks off. Masks optional. Masks optional. Masks required indoors, unless you're standing still, humming quietly, and wearing Crocs. He didn't write guidelines, he wrote riddles. That's where Joe Rogan entered the chat. Watching from afar, eyes squinting like he just opened a Tupperware full of week-old sushi, Joe's not exactly a fan of power-hungry politicians who govern like they invented Google. Why were playgrounds wrapped in caution tape, but liquor stores treated like sacred ground? Watching Rogan dissect the logic was like watching a bear gently peel a banana, then smash it into the floor anyway.
He was 100% right with Tim Walz.
I know I'm doing something right when the Fox News crowd is all pitching at me like crazy. Like, I'm loving it.
That guy was almost the vice president of the United States.
Elon Musk was crying last week. Tim is being mean to me, base, yeah.
I'm sure you've seen that thing where it shows Obama saying, "I need a vice president that's dumber than me."
He may or may not have cognitive decline problems at his age, but at her age, she's just dumb.
Yeah, Biden,
I think I was saying that
I need a vice president dumber than me.
And just when things couldn't get worse for Tim Walz, in struts Greg Gutfeld, casually sipping a cocktail of sarcasm and Red Bull, where Rogan points out the flaws. Gutfeld drags those flaws into the spotlight, dresses them in clown makeup, and hands them a mic. His mockery was so precise, you could practically hear political consultants sobbing into their oat milk lattes. Gutfeld didn't paint Walz as a leader in crisis, he painted him as a guy who saw a smoke alarm and tried to fight the fire with confetti and wishful thinking. He torched the absurdity of it all, like banning indoor dining while encouraging outdoor dining in plastic igloos with windows. At that point, the guidelines were changing faster than Gutfeld's own haircut. And the grand finale. Small businesses being told to hang in there right before getting blindsided by another midweek press conference. Written by what sounded like a confused intern channeling a magic 8-ball.
Politico writes this piece on the body language from the debate, claiming that it speaks volumes. Yeah, it says that Walz lost, but one of them, Politico says, is like Walz's wide eyes showed his passion and emotional intensity. Can we show that? There is his wide eyes.
Rogan couldn't hold back. He called out the brutal truth. It was the working class that got steamrolled. Barbers, mechanics, personal trainers, everyone who couldn't hide behind a Zoom background or expensive ring light. Meanwhile, Walz and his circle, still glowing on every perfectly lit virtual call untouched, unbothered, and completely insulated from the chaos outside. And don't even get him started on the remote learning disaster. Rogan practically roared when he pointed out how regular kids got dumped into digital purgatory, while the children of the elite floated through private schools like it was just another Tuesday. Then came Gutfeld, turning the whole thing into a darkly hilarious sketch. He imagined Walz spinning a Wheel of Fortune every morning labeled, "Mandate, mask up, blame the feds, pretend everything's fine," all while casually sipping on kombucha. This wasn't a conspiracy theory. This was Walz's own track record, playing on repeat and sounding more unhinged with every spin. And for anyone thinking it was just a COVID critique, Gutfeld hit rewind and reminded everyone of the post-George Floyd chaos. Businesses burned, cities spiraled, and leadership vanished like it was just another Zoom glitch.
You seen that video?
No.
This is what people love about Donald Trump. The fact that he would say this.
But unfortunately, Governor Walz isn't here himself, but don't worry, he'll say that he was. He's going to say he was. I used to think the Democrats were crazy for saying that men have, period, but then I met Tim Walz.
It's hard to even bring him up. He has a resting snitch face. You know? I mean, he forfeited his man card during COVID and the riots. And you're right. And also, at that diner, of course, he left early.
Tim Walz spent more time trying to figure out who was in charge than actually being in charge. It was like playing hide-and-seek with accountability, only no one ever yelled found. Rogan came in armed with cold, hard stats, rising crime, economic fallout, scorched small businesses. Gutfeld brought the punchlines sharp, fast, and fatal. Together, they turned a policy meltdown into a live-streamed roast you couldn't look away from. To Gutfeld, this wasn't leadership. It was government cosplay. Walz dressed like a governor but delivered like a substitute teacher who left the lesson plan in his car. And the worst part, the people paid the price. Families, business owners, kids in chaos. While Walz spiraled, Rogan made him a cautionary tale, and Gutfeld turned him into late-night satire. Because when your pandemic response becomes the punchline, for a UFC commentator and a libertarian with a whiteboard, it's probably time to update your resume. Or at the very least read your own executive orders before signing the next one.
Odd greeting, the man of the hour. Tim Walz brings us our second video of the day, and he's got a very weird way of greeting his wife of 30 years. Roll it. I want to see this in slow motion. You'll see Walz extends his hand to his wife. She grabs it. They shake. He pulls her close and then goes in for that non-friction hug, all the while still shaking her hand. I wish there was a word to describe that. Oh, yeah, weird.
That's when Joe Rogan officially stepped into the ring. No suit, no script, just a mic, a pair of headphones, and enough built-up frustration to power the Texas grid. You could feel the sigh before he spoke. Because while Tim Walz was busy, inventing a new flavor of indecision, Rogan was watching the circus unfold in real time, and his BS radar was lighting up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. He didn't just call out the hypocrisy, he blasted it through a megaphone. Mom and pop shops. Fined, shut down, and buried under red tape. Big box chains. Glided through lockdowns like VIPs at a pandemic gala. This wasn't science. It wasn't fairness. It was a rigged system, where the rulebook magically changed depending on who had better lobbyists and bigger checks. And Rogan. He didn't need a podium, just a platform and a pulse on reality.
Scary close to people justifying totalitarian measures.
I think we need to push back on this.
Tim Walz in the campaign trail was literally saying free speech doesn't include hate speech and misinformation.
There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Hey man, you. Because everything that we called misinformation just a few years ago, it's on the front page of the New York Times.
On his podcast, Greg Gutfeld broke it all down with the kind of blunt common sense that made people stop mid-scroll and go, wait, yeah, what was that all about? In one episode, he carved up performative politics like a roast chicken crispy. On the outside, hollow on the inside. What looked good on camera rarely made any real-world sense. And who better to showcase that than Tim Walz? His policies became a running joke, a masterclass in contradiction. Like when Minnesota announced capacity limits that got dumber the longer you thought about them. You could sit in a restaurant but not at the bar. You could eat indoors, but only before 10 p.m., because apparently that's when the virus wakes up, puts on cologne, and starts mingling. Rogan, meanwhile, went full mic drop. His class war commentary wasn't subtle, it was a flamethrower. He mocked the chaos like a stand-up comic trapped inside a public health thriller. It's safe. No wait, it's dangerous. Actually, just follow the science, which we updated 5 minutes ago because someone panicked after a tweet. You didn't know whether to laugh or scream. Joe made sure you did both.
It's amazing how they operate one way when they're running, and then when they lose and get humiliated, all of a sudden they have these solutions, and they're all the things they're telling you to do. Like, why are you trying to trash one of the most successful companies in the world, you moron?
And they never did that because they all used to love Trump when Trump was giving them money.
Yeah.
Then Trump became like Rodney Dangerfield in Caddyshack.
Yeah.
He crashed their party, showed up at the White House, and he was just like, hey, you know what? We should put like a casino over there, an MMA ring over there.
Just as Walz's approval ratings began free-falling into the abyss, Greg Gutfeld parachuted in smirking, sarcastic, and fully armed with a flamethrower. If Rogan was the everyman asking honest questions, Gutfeld was the snarky uncle at Thanksgiving, one who doesn't care what you think and brings color-coded charts just to ruin desert. Debate, please. Gutfeld doesn't debate, he demolishes, and with Walz, he didn't need punchlines. Because Walz was the punchline, he zeroed in on Walz's emergency power addiction, roasting him like a guy endlessly stuck on the font selection screen in Microsoft Word. He's not saving lives, he's just obsessed with Times New Roman. This wasn't leadership, it was theater, bad theater. The kind you walk out of halfway through and ask for a refund. And Gutfeld. He didn't just criticize, he rewrote the whole script with enough satire to send Walz's press team into a full-blown crisis zoom.
They've released analyses of election data out of Clark County, Nevada that show some pretty convincing evidence of election tampering. So what can we do to make sure, A, that the midterms actually happen, and B, that they're free of fraud?
Yeah, this one's a core. We saw just recently Donald Trump's executive order to make it more difficult, specifically to women, trying to make it more difficult for women to be able to vote. We see one of the first things they do is try and restrict the vote.
Wait, so Trump is making it more difficult for women to vote? How so? Math problems?
Then came the bigger picture, the broader critique that turned into a full body slam. Walz wasn't leading. He was LARPing as a leader. A blue state bureaucrat playing dress up while real Americans bled out financially. One sniffle from Fauci, and Walz hit the panic button like he'd just gotten a text from the apocalypse. There was no balancing act, just a default setting of mass hysteria. Then came Gutfeld's knockout punch. Tim Walz didn't unite anyone, he lost everyone. Liberals think he's spineless. Conservatives think he's unhinged. That's not balance, that's just being bad at your job. Game set, public trust, obliterated, and just when you thought it couldn't get more brutal, cue the side-by-side breakdowns. Walz, stammering through yet another awkward redefinition of what counts as essential. Rogan, squinting like someone just tried to explain crypto to a toaster. Then Gutfeld cuts in with a line so absurd it practically broke the internet. It makes perfect sense. If you've been sniffing hand sanitizer and licking sidewalk chalk, the internet didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or Amazon Prime Walz, a copy of Leadership for Dummies.
Whose expertise does he rely upon for his Midwestern takes? Here's Minnesota State Rep Leigh Finke, who wants to train more children's doctors on sex change surgery and puberty blockers. He sponsored the Trans Refuge Bill, which Walz signed, which makes Minnesota a sanctuary state for such butchery.
If you promise trans refuge, then we need to increase the number of people who are offering gender-affirming care. So we have some money, hopefully we can pass, to help entice people to move from those states who also practice gender-affirming care. We want to do internship programs and fellowship programs with Children's Minnesota and other places where people can learn gender-affirming care.
Wow. It's now available for babysitting.
The takedown wasn't loud, it was surgical. Not a roasted dissection. Every contradiction exposed. Every absurd regulation spun into a punchline. And at the center of it all, a governor, standing in the rubble of his own decision-making, wondering why no one was clapping anymore. But this wasn't just about Tim Walz. This was about something bigger, the erosion of public trust. What happens when leaders pretend to lead, then blame the fallout on the very people they failed to listen to? Minnesota's economy took a hit. Small businesses vanished. Polls started to slide. Approval ratings sank like a canoe with a hole no one wanted to patch. Even loyal voters started asking, wait, we signed up for this. Other governors owned their missteps. Tim Walz, he stayed stuck on repeat patient zero of performative politics. And then came Rogan's final blow, blunt, as ever, piercing in its simplicity. We're not saying don't lead, we're saying stop pretending you are. And just like that, a sitting governor's credibility was body slammed not by a rival politician, but by a podcast host and a Fox News comedian. Not with rage, Not with hate, just with facts, satire, and the kind of clarity that only comes when the fog of fake leadership finally lifts.